stage now?
Yes, you're on stage, but we cannot see you. Can you please turn your video on?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I had my video on. Sorry. I'm clicking on it, but
You're not able to do that?
I'm clicking on the camera backstage. I'm sorry.
So do you want to go with audio then?
Oh, wait a minute. No. All right. All right.
No, I think you didn't enable your camera. It is asking for permissions. We cannot see you.
You cannot see me. Oh my goodness. I'm sorry. I clicked on the camera there.
I think your camera is not on because you didn't have permissions to on. So you need to enable your camera from your settings.
Well, backstage. I can't see where. I've got the camera down here, turn off, and it says that it's on. It looks like I've enabled it along with the speaker.
Could you please try it once again? Or you want to rejoin?
I'm sorry, I just can't. I've clicked on the camera. Oh. And so I'm not going to be able to show my slides either, am I?
Yes. Yeah, try to share your screen. We can able to see. Could you please share your screen?
Yeah, if you could share the screen and show my slides. I've got them here on my laptop. Can you load my slides and just show them on my screen, and then I'll do my presentation. They may not be able to see me, but if they can see my slides.
We cannot see your slides. Do you want us to do from our side?
I'm sorry, can you show the slides? I mean,
yes, please. Yeah, we will share from our side. 1 second.
Okay. Okay. So yes, if you can.
Yes. So before you start your presentation, how are you, Cheryl Patterson?
I'm good, thank you.
So we are enjoying this Day One Virtual Summit 2025.
Yes, I'm very glad to be a part of this wonderful conference about guiding and influencing women for the next generation of business leadership. So for these slides now, can I advance them myself or do you need to advance them?
So we will have a complete control. So if you want to change the slide, just let us know next slide so that we can change them up.
Okay, can you make them full screen? Can you do the slides full screen?
Yes, we
So they
will
don't,
do it. Before you start your presentation, I would like to introduce you to the audience. So welcome
thank
on
you.
stage, Cheryl Patterson, talk title, Empowering Resilience, Navigating Future Leadership in a World with Increasing Rates of Autoimmune Disease and Chronic Illness with over 5 decades in healthcare. Cheryl Patterson is a visionary leader in wellness, resilience, and patient advocacy. Her journey, both professional and personal, has equipped her with profound insights into managing chronic illness while maintaining a fulfilling career. As a health and wellness coach, she empowers individuals to navigate leadership, life, and health challenges with strength and perseverance. So yes, you can occupy the stage and start your presentation. So if you want to change the slide, just let us know next slide so that we can change from our side. Okay,
Okay,
Sharon?
all right, I'll tell you. And so just make
Yeah,
the screens, yeah,
yeah,
full screen.
doing that.
Okay. Well, I will go ahead and get started now with the first slide. I'm going to be talking with you today about empowering resilience, navigating future leadership in a world with increasing autoimmune diseases and chronic illnesses. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Can you move ahead with the next slide? Can you hear me? Can you move to the next slide, please? Or you can't hear me?
Yeah. Can you see it now?
Yeah, can you move to the next slide? And can you make it full screen?
Yeah, this is the maximum. This is the full screen. This is the maximum we can do it from our side.
Okay, so we need to talk about the definition of resilience, which is the ability to adapt and bounce back from adversity, stress, or challenging situations while maintaining mental and emotional well-being and maximal productivity in your job. So people that have challenges with autoimmune diseases and chronic illnesses require even stronger resilience. Next slide, please. Next slide. Move ahead to the next slide, please. Can you hear me? Oh, this isn't going to work. Next slide, please. Can you move ahead to the next slide? All right. Okay, so who am I? I am Cheryl Patterson. I'm a registered nurse with a bachelor's and master's degree in nursing with clinical expertise in orthopedics, pain management, and physical rehab. I also obtained my MBA to work with interdisciplinary teams in all these different roles. And then I was awarded a fellowship to obtain my PhD. So I've done research in orthopedics and healthcare management, done university teaching. I'm married with 3 children and 4 children and 3 grandchildren. And I'm now working as a health and wellness, life and career coach for people with autoimmune diseases. And why is that? Because I have 2 of those myself. I was diagnosed at the age of 12 with psoriasis, which is an autoimmune skin disease. I was diagnosed at the age of 34 with multiple sclerosis. which is an autoimmune disease of the brain and nervous system. Next slide, please. Can we move on? Okay, so what is autoimmunity? The immune system is your body's first line of defense against invaders from the outside, like viruses, bacteria, protozoa, fungi, or other invaders. Autoimmune means the system attacks itself. Auto is Greek for self. So what happens is the immune system mistakes some organ or tissue in your body as a foreign invader and attacks it. So for example, myself with my MS, my immune system mistakenly misidentified the myelin tissue that covers and protects nerve cells as an outside invader and began to attack it. Next slide. We need to move on to the next slide. Okay, so there are over 100 different autoimmune diseases. Each one involves a different organ, bodily system, or tissue type. There are autoimmune diseases that affect the muscles, myasthenia gravis. There's rheumatoid arthritis, which is an autoimmune disease of the connective tissue and supporting tissues around joints. There are a lot of different autoimmune diseases that involve the gastrointestinal system, like Crohn's disease, irritable bowel syndrome, ulcerative colitis. There's lupus, which is an autoimmune disease that affects the kidneys, the lining of the heart and the lungs, the skin, the joints, a lot of different tissues. There are autoimmune diseases that affect the thyroid gland, your eyes, all different tissues. Now, depending on what tissues or organs or bodily systems are involved, the person will have different symptoms, different clinical problems, different limitations, depending on the tissue involved. But the other thing that varies from person to person is how severe their disease is. You can have a very mild case of a disease where the symptoms are minimal, the progression of disability is slower and doesn't interfere too much with a person's daily life. You can have a moderate case of a disease where the symptoms are a little more severe. The progression of disability is more problematic with home life, with a job, or someone can be unfortunate enough to have a very aggressive disease course where the symptoms are very severe and the progression of disability is very rapid and significant in their life. But the one point I want to make today, because this relates to this conference about women, is that as a diagnostic group, autoimmune diseases occur 80% of the time in women. Now, why that is, we don't know yet. We don't know the causes of these diseases and we don't know the cures. But it was recognized decades ago by physicians that these diseases occur more often in women. So now the next slide. Go to the next slide. Okay, so as I mentioned in the title, we are seeing increased incidence and prevalence of autoimmune diseases around the world, and especially in the United States. Now, why is that? There are a number of different health trends and global changes that may explain why this is. First of all, physician symptom recognition is greater. Physicians are able to recognize earlier on symptoms that women are experiencing so that they can do the complete workup and come up with the diagnosis. The diagnostic tools and methods are improving and increasing with advances in medical science all the time. And then there are environmental effects and toxins that we're exposed to that are thought to play into these increases. There's pollutants, pesticides, cleaning agents we use, and microplastics that leach into our systems. There are many dietary changes that have occurred in our lives. In the past few decades, there are so many more food additives. We're eating so much more processed food. We are eating more sugar and gluten, which are inflammatory food substances. And the point I want to make here is that food is probably the singular most important factor that affects our health. So the range of chronic inflammatory conditions is increasing, and additional disorders are being identified all the time. Chronic inflammation is at the core of autoimmune pathology or tissue damage. Now, acute inflammation is good because acute inflammation heals infections and injuries, wounds, surgical incisions. But chronic inflammation is the process going on inside the body of a person with an autoimmune disease that's occurring continuously, ongoingly, that is responsible for the tissue damage. Migration of people groups around the world is also thought to play a role in these increases we're seeing. It's so much easier for people to move and travel. And the last factor is psychosocial stress of all kinds that people are feeling in an increased level. Global stress is increasing, and that refers to natural and man-made disasters that are occurring around the world. And with our increased ability to communicate and pass information, whether it's through the internet, our cell phones, our televisions, we can learn about disasters that are occurring practically in real time, something happening halfway around the world, we can learn about within minutes. Now, so many of these disasters that we're hearing about in the news causes distress and feeds into the negativity mindset of people, which is felt to impact diseases and health and wellness. Next slide. Next slide. So, as we're facing increased incidence and prevalence of autoimmune diseases, and they occur more often in women, we need to be helping build resilience and do adaptability training for women as they are moving into more and more leadership positions into the future. We need to help women accept the challenges or the limitations that are related to their diagnosis, because as I said, depending on the diagnosis and the severity of their disease, they will have different challenges or limitations. We need to help women strengthen their coping mechanisms and their emotional regulation, because both those areas are tested so much greater when there is an autoimmune disease that a woman is dealing with. We need to help women adapt to changes throughout their life cycle. Now, there will be changes that will occur due to their diagnosis, but also related to the aging process. I mean, we're all aging, right? We can't reverse aging. We're dealing with that, all of us. But if you are someone who has an autoimmune disease and you're dealing with the changes in life, it's a double whammy that we're being struck with. We want to help women. I'll give you an example from my own life. 2 months ago, I had a complete heart block. I had 2 cardiac arrests in the hospital. Now, I was obviously successfully resuscitated because I'm still here. And I guess the Lord decided it wasn't my time to go. But I have a permanent cardiac pacemaker implanted under my collarbone that makes sure my heart beats consistently and with the right rhythm. Now, I asked my cardiologist, I said, is this related to my MS? And he said, no, it's not related to your MS. It's related to your age. He said, anybody who's over the age of 70 will experience, again, depending on the person, weakening of the fibers within the heart that make sure the heart is beating regularly with the right rhythm. And so I'm going to be 72 soon. So in my case, it was a matter of the fibers in my heart weakening. Now, in last September, I had a total hip replacement. Was that related to my MS? Yes, it was. And why? I'll tell you. Because when I was diagnosed with MS, it was in the 1980s, and there were no drugs for MS except for steroids. As I said, autoimmune diseases are diseases of inflammatory processes. So anytime I had a flare-up of my MS, I was given steroids, large doses of steroids. And if you know what happens with steroids, it really wreaks havoc on a woman's bones. And especially with menopause, women experience osteoporosis. Drugs that help influence the disease of MS and other autoimmune diseases really didn't come into play until the mid-1990s. So I had about 7 years of high doses of those steroids that then affected my bones. That's what happened with my hips. So again, as we're looking at all these things that we need to help women with, we need to do role modeling, mentorships, and coaching on the job or on the outside. I do coaching privately on the outside. More and more corporations are offering coaches internally as a benefit for employees to help them perform at their highest level. We can do role modeling and mentorships. If there are older women, for example, that have got an autoimmune disease, and younger women are joining the organization and working their way up the ladder into leadership positions, the older women can provide some of their expertise, their experience, help them understand how they accepted the challenges, strengthened themselves, and adapted to changes through their life. Next slide, please. So we need to look at work-life balance, and that's nothing new. We all know about work-life balance. We're all trying to maintain that balance. But as we move forward into the future, with more women moving into leadership positions and more autoimmune diseases, we need to get more innovative about work arrangements and environments in the future. So yes, we are looking at some of these options already, but we need to be looking and developing more remote work options, hybrid work models, flexible scheduling, compressed work weeks, job sharing opportunities, and supportive technology, whether it's portable devices or remote access, VPNs. And now with robotics that we're seeing being introduced into the workplace and even in the homes, these are options that may help women in the future deal with their diseases and still maintain their work-life balance. These may not all work for every woman, depending on the nature of her limitations, her challenges, her symptoms. She may not be able to job share with someone else in certain jobs. She may not be able to work a hybrid work model or work flexible hours. Again, it's an individualized assessment that needs to be done for each woman. We need to prioritize self-care. We need to be doing this for ourselves right now, don't we? But as women, we tend to prioritize our children, our spouses and partners, and our aging parents before we take care of ourselves. Well, for women with autoimmune diseases or any chronic illness, we need to make sure that they are implementing different kinds of self-care actions. And this is something that I cover in my coaching programs to help women be able to maintain and sustain their highest level of health and wellness. We need to help women with time management skills and energy conservation methods, because fatigue is the #1 symptom and complaint and problem that people with autoimmune diseases list for themselves. Men and women both. It's fatigue and lack of energy. And so I teach these skills and these methods in my coaching programs, and we need to do this on the job as well, so that women can maximize their efficiency while they're on the job and conserve energy while they're working, so that at the end of the day, they've still got something left to enjoy their weekends, their evenings with friends and family. Next slide, please. Next slide. Can we go on? Support networks. We need to develop support networks. Again, building connections among coworkers to help women who've got these autoimmune diseases. It can be vertical positions or horizontal. And I'll give you an example from my work life. The last 8 years that I was employed, I worked for a large healthcare organization that had a main building on the campus with some outlying buildings, but we decided to add on 3 new additions and have 3 new service lines for our organization. And this was before COVID. And we were adding on an event center to have celebrations and events for the community and for our organization. We were building on a wellness center with all kinds of wellness programs, physical wellness, dietary wellness, massage therapy, all kinds of, for people 55 and older. And then we were adding on a new inpatient physical rehab unit. Well, it took about 3.5 years to build on these 3 new units. Well, as I was working in this organization, my boss, who was the CEO, knew that I had MS, and she knew my legs were getting weaker over these years that I was working there. And as my legs were getting weaker, the distances that I could walk before I needed to sit and rest my legs got shorter and shorter. and the length of time I was able to stand in a standing meeting before I needed to sit and rest my legs got shorter and shorter. And she was aware of this. So while we're building these 3 big additions, from time to time, we would do walking rounds to look at the progress. And these walking rounds would include the architects, the construction crews, the interdisciplinary team, the interior designer. Sometimes it would be city officials. Sometimes it would be newscasters. So there would be a large group of people walking around to look at these different additions. And she was able to, in a very subtle and discreet way, kind of shepherd this group of people to an area where there would be a chair or a bench or a half wall for me to sit on so that I could rest my legs. That's just one example of ways that we can help coworkers who may have limitations and challenges as they're working. We need to develop safe spaces for discussion, problem solving, and peer support so that women can come together and share their problems, their solutions, support each other. We need to utilize the resources and assistance that are available and make sure that women are aware of all these employee assistance programs and options that are available for them in their jobs. Next slide, please. Next slide. So we need to promote wellness initiatives. These days, most organizations have a chief wellness officer. It may not have that title, it may be a different title, but the whole idea is that we have wellness challenges. We offer tools, resources, and recognition programs that help maintain and sustain and maximize people's health and wellness. We need to look at workplace ergonomics. Ergonomics is the relationship of the person's body to their workspace. So we need to be looking at things like, for example, if somebody's autoimmune disease affects their eyes, what kind of lighting do they have? Is it the right kind of lighting? Is it enough lighting? Maybe it's room temperature that affects their symptoms. Are we making sure that they can control that? Maybe it's the chair they're sitting in or the desk that they're working at or their computer station. Or how far is it from their office to the cafeteria? We need to look at all those factors. We need to be offering groups and classes of different kinds. Fitness, meditation, mindfulness, and stress management have all been shown to affect health and wellness. And I offer those different topics and classes in my coaching programs, but we should be able to do this at work as well. Even a 15 or 20-minute session at break time or during lunch or at the end of the day. We need to be providing healthy snacks. As I said, what we eat is so important. Look at the vending machines. What kind of junk food is in there? Do we need to switch out the junk food for healthy snacks? Do we have grab and go counters where there's snacks and lunches? Do we need to make sure that's healthy food? We can have nutrition workshops. We can bring in a nutritionist once a month to talk about healthy eating, healthy cooking, shopping for food. And we can have group lunches where we are helping people stay on track with their anti-inflammatory diets that they're trying to maintain. Next slide, please. Next slide. And we need to be looking at health education and policy advocacy. As we're moving into the future with more women facing autoimmune diseases, other chronic illnesses, we need to make sure that we've got health literacy initiatives, which means access to good, reliable health information and resources. Maybe someone has just been diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. They want to know what kind of community resources are available to help them. They want access to good information. Or maybe it's somebody whose autoimmune disease they've had for several decades, and now they're going through menopause or a different life change, and they want to know about what kind of resources are available to help them through this stage. We need to look at chronic disease prevention at work, which requires awareness, actions, and policies. So that involves doing health screenings, looking at environmental risk assessments, which most insurance companies require. We need to be looking at the toxins that people are exposed to at work, the structures they work in, and the air quality they're working in. And we need to be providing evidence-based policymaking. Evidence-based refers to scientific research that is the foundation for the policies that are being written. We need to have women's health equity policies. Health equity refers to access to services, resources, opportunities, and cultural competency in the caregivers and providers that are giving the healthcare. And that's equity regardless of the woman's socioeconomic status, the level of her position in the organization, her race, her ethnicity, or any other factors of differentiation. And then we need policies for childhood health and wellness and caregiver support, because it is primarily the women that are planning, arranging for, scheduling, or firsthand delivering the caregiver support for children and aging parents at times when they are not at work. So last slide here, if we can move on to the last slide. So again, in conclusion, preparing future women business leaders in an era marked by increasing autoimmune diseases and chronic illnesses requires a multifaceted approach. We need to provide programs that build resilience and adaptability for women leaders with autoimmune diseases by using role modeling and mentoring and coaching methods. We need to develop innovative employee work schedules, arrangements, and environments. We need to implement wellness initiatives and health education resources. We have to assure that employee health advocacy is included in our policies and promote work-life balance and supportive networks to ensure that women in the future will thrive as leaders at all levels in organizations of any kind in all industries. Thank you very much. And so I'm looking in the chat area for any questions.
Thank you very much, Cheryl Patterson, for letting us know about the future leadership in a world. So we do have a question for Cheryl. How can organizations support employees who struggle with chronic illnesses?
Okay, I couldn't quite hear you. Say that again. How can what?
How can organizations support employees who struggle with chronic illness?
How can authorizations
support employees who struggle with chronic illnesses?
Again, I couldn't quite hear the beginning of the question, but
okay, let me repeat again. How can organizations support employees who struggle with chronic illness?
Yes. Again, we want to be able to assess what is their struggle, what is their challenge. We want to be able to look at how, whether it's through some work assistance from other people in the organization that can share their experience. Like I said, some role modeling and some mentoring that can be provided. We need to look at the environment that they're working in to make sure that there isn't something within that work environment where they are that is preventing them from doing their job. And again, somebody may already have a condition when they're hired, and they don't have to necessarily reveal that or tell anyone. But as they look at what the job requires, and they are talking with resources that are available to help them understand what they can do to work that job with the limitations and challenges that they have. Now, it may be that somebody has already been working in that job for a while and develops their symptoms and is diagnosed with the condition. Well, then they need to look at ways that either they can change what's happening in that, the way they're working, the environment they're working in, getting advice from other people that can help them do their job the best they can. Because, you know, that's what organizations want to do, is retain people. More and more, we are faced with trying to retain people. And I think everybody's aware of that. It is much better to retain people than to try and find somebody new. So if you've got somebody who is finding some challenges because of an autoimmune disease, organizations want to help that person be able to stay in their role and perform to the best of their ability. it's a lot more time and trouble and cost to have to find a new person to fill that spot. And so there are ways, there are resources that organizations have that help people in that situation.
So thank you so much for explaining the question. So whomever asked this question, I hope they got the answer. So thank you so much for joining this day one Global Virtual Summit 2025 and encouraging our speakers as well. Please do join other speakers and post your question, show some love, and encourage this day one event. Thank you. And please do join our next speaker. She's already waiting in the backstage. Her name is Beth Saita.
Thank you.
Thank you and